Randy. Mayor Aarons, President Perry, Mr. Walker, and distinguished guests here today, it is truly an honor for me to just play a very small part in a very, very big happening in Howard, South Dakota. The Rural Learning Center, sincerely and honestly, has set the standard for reimagining rural America. If you can imagine, that seed was planted right here in Minor County, South Dakota. And other parts of the country send delegations to Howard to see how these people here in the front of the room and all of you sat back and dreamed a dream that has become a reality. It's a beautiful day in Howard, not unlike most of the days in this part of the country that we enjoy between Memorial Day and, give or take, but Halloween. But it isn't days like this that we are judged and we are measured as South Dakotans. When the temperature dips below zero, the winds are howling and ice pellets are nailing you in the face as you make your way to Maroney's bar. Those are the days upon which the hardy stock of the northern plains are measured. Besides, you have to be tough to want an ice cold beer when it's 40 degrees below zero. That same toughness, perseverance, and vision is what brought our grandparents to Minor, Sanborn, Lake, and McCook counties 100 years ago. They had a dream, and that was something no one could take from them. As a matter of fact, they were reimagining rural before reimagining rural was cool. Today, we celebrate the vision of a new set of pioneers, a generation that harnesses the wind and the magic that it provides, a generation that teaches our youth that you can come home again, a generation that no longer accepts that the good old days in rural America were reserved for our parents, a generation that decided rural decline was a self-fulfilling prophecy and took a chance on investing in the resources that we have right here in our own backyard, or if you will, right on the back 40. Today is indeed a celebration, and I am pleased and honored to be here. When Dr. Beto called and asked if I would come and speak, I chuckled. I was taken a little by surprise. I'm not a speaker. I'm really a storyteller. I travel around the state of South Dakota and steal ideas from incredible people and incredible places that unfortunately not enough South Dakotans get to visit. I tell stories of people and of places and of cattle and crops from communities that many have never even heard of. While I contemplated today's remarks from my office in Pierre, I decided it wasn't the right setting for writing what I consider one of the most important speeches that I will ever give. So I looked at my calendar, canceled a couple meetings, and I drove to Howard the day before yesterday. And I sat at a picnic table right on the courthouse lawn, under a canopy, trees, beautiful afternoon, kids playing in the park, and I said this is the place to write a speech about reimagining rural. Under the trees of the park, you can hear the school children at the elementary school 2 blocks to the west. You can hear the band practicing at Howard High School 2 blocks to the north. This is rural. You can hear the wind blowing through the trees overhead, and you can think about the men and women who have cursed it for decades, only to be replaced by a new generation of Minor County residents who embrace it for the industry and employment it brings and the clean energy that it represents. This is rural. I thought about a dear friend of mine that afternoon who grew up in Howard. She grew up here, graduated from high school here, and died of cancer too young. She blessed my wife and I with being the godparents of her only daughter. She was a farm girl. She was rural. She was also brilliant and visionary. She would love her hometown today. This was the right place to write this speech. At the South Dakota Community Foundation, we work directly with over 60 South Dakota communities. Those communities understand that there is potential for the future in rural America. Ranging in size from 200 to 30,000 people, we find some of the most engaged, driven, and dedicated volunteers in our most rural communities. These folks understand there's a need for investment in rural America. They also fully understand that while critically important, financial resources are not the only type of investment needed. Resources such as time and talent, leadership skills, motivational conversations, and a rekindling of a spirit of hope is just as critical in places like Howard. Developing and sustaining a sense of place. That's what we call it. Developing and sustaining a sense of place. It is hard and rewarding work, which is not a novel concept at all to rural South Dakotans. It is also not a mountain so high that it has not been previously scaled. On August 28, 1963, John, you said you were 6 in 1962? Okay. Nearly 46 years ago to this day, just about a week off, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream address in Washington, D.C. He spoke to an audience who had spent decades living in a country where they were not considered or treated as equals. While they had every reason to give up hope, they did not. They had a dream. They reimagined race. And as a result of that day, thousands and thousands of hours of blood, sweat, tears, and toil, incredible vision, persistence beyond comprehension. Today, we have an African-American president of the United States and a Latina woman on the United States Supreme Court. It wasn't whether or not they were dreaming dreams that were too big. It was whether they could afford not to. That is how important reimagining rural is in South Dakota. It can transform a county, or a country, a state, and a community, and it must. It started right here in Minor County. Someday my son or my daughter will stand before a group of people and talk about how a moment in time made a difference in rural America. That moment and place in time will and has to include Howard, South Dakota. I urge each of you to never stop using your imagination. Think about the words reimagine rural. Think about the speech Reverend King gave 46 years ago. And then bear with me for just a few minutes. Reimagine rural as a place where children do not wish to flee, but where they dream to return. Reimagine rural as the waving wheat fields of Lyman County, South Dakota, with wind towers on the ridges to both the north and the south, supplying clean energy to people in distant cities where they can hardly imagine, let alone reimagine rural. Reimagine rural as a place where people do not talk about what used to be on Main Street, but where they dare to dream about what will be there in 2 decades when their children and grandchildren return as entrepreneurs and open their businesses. Reimagine rural as the rich culture of the Lakota people in Eagle Butte, developing and sustaining ecotourism programs that attract visitors and dollars in numbers that are beyond comprehension. And they were once considered unimaginable. Reimagine rural as a community that is not measured by the number of people calling it home, but by the vision of and imagination of those that do. Reimagine rural as a community that makes the decision that luggage is no longer acceptable as a gift for high school graduates, but the investment in getting them back home is the responsibility of all. If you're a lifelong resident of Howard, Fedora, Canova, Egan, or Artesian, it's hard to imagine what is taking place here today. If you are the City Foundation, the Northwest Area Foundation, the South Dakota Community Foundation, or a private contributor to this project, it's hard to resist what is happening here today. If you're Randy Perry, Joe Kobaugh, Pat Maroney, or Jim Beto, this was the plan all along. Some of us just couldn't see it. Last Saturday, I was in Mitchell for Corn Palace Days. Talk about imagination. You glue corn on the side of a gym and it becomes a tourist attraction. And I saw a sign that read, "Logic will get you from point A to point B. Imagination will get you wherever you want to go." Congratulations to the Rural Learning Center, to Howard, to Minor County, and all of you who imagined this would someday become a reality. You are a shining example for all of rural America. I'm honored to be here today. Congratulations and thank you.